Hey, hey, hey. Happy Wednesday. Come on in, pull up a chair. The Gaming Gang Dispatch is in the air. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang Dispatch, sponsored by Monolith Board Games and their Mythic Battles role-playing games currently up on GameFound. We'll get to that in just a few moments. Well, welcome aboard, everyone. Tonight is Wednesday, March 18th, 2026. This is live stream 1301. If you're not overly familiar with the show, let me point out it's super casual around here. Just hanging out, talking about the latest in tabletop role-playing game news, and then we will usually chat about a topic related to the hobby. And tonight, we're going to talk about the Dungeons & Dragons survey, and more importantly, what you want Wizards of the Coast to understand about your Dungeons & Dragons. But of course, we'll be tackling the tabletop role-playing game news first before we get into that. Do also want to mention, if whenever you're not watching videos here on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are not going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Also, because this is a live show, there is chat available. Now, you must be a subscriber to the channel for at least an hour before you can take part in chat. But if you check off that box, you want to say howdy, maybe you got a question, comment, by all means, chime in. I will do my very best to respond. First out of the gate tonight is Semper Buffo, good friend of the show. The Madman is next up, as is Bard the Bear Wolfson. DB's with us, J-Man, Pete Strakulich, and Kathy Evans. Rounding out the early arrivers in chat. And I would not be surprised if the lovely and talented Miss Sarah D is lurking in the shadows as one of our chat moderators alongside the Madman. That's a maybe. That is a possibility. Certainly is. All right, so let's talk about our sponsor. That's right, because over on GameFound, you will find the Mythic Battles, I almost said board games, role-playing games, Pantheon and Ragnarok. And here's the lowdown from Monolith Board Games. That's where I was going with the board games. Two apocalypses, one lethal engine. Mythic Battles RPG brings the acclaimed board game universe to tabletop role-playing with two standalone core books. Pantheon, a Greek post-apocalypse, and Ragnarok, a Norse survival fantasy. Powered by a highly tactical player-facing system where the GM never rolls, you must manage your vital resources and survive the brutal death spiral to forge your legend. Fully written, beautifully illustrated, and shipping in less than a year. In Pantheon, the world is not as it was. Gone are the days of bright skies, full fields, and flashing blue oceans filled with sea life and plied by hardy sailors. Gone are the citadels of thought, commerce, and democracy. Gone are the times when gods walked among humanity, bringing with them their bounty, blessings, and divine presence. In Ragnarok, the cold of the northerly wind sweeps across the world. The crops wither and fish die. Brother fights brother, and the skies darken as the warring gods shatter the earth. Ragnarok approaches. Should mention this is, believe it is fully funded as of today. Guess I could have double checked before I started the show, but things have been crazy around here. We'll talk in a minute. Anyway, regardless, you can reserve a copy of either of the hardcovers with the accompanying PDF for a pledge of 55 euros. If you want to grab both books, about 85% of the content in each of the books is different than the other. They do share the same core mechanics. But if you want to grab both with PDFs, you can do that for a pledge of 115 euros, which will also include some extra goodies too. Now, this Game Found project is running through April 2nd, and expected fulfillment is this November. So, nice, quick turnaround. Very, very well. Very, very well. DB says, yes, early adopters are here. That's actually the direction I was going in first. And I was like, well, I don't know. It doesn't sound right. Early arrivals? Maybe a little bit better. Maybe a little bit better. So as I was mentioning, kind of crazy around here today. We had a roofer out because of the wind damage from last week. Guess going to replace the entire roof, because I guess that's what they have to have done in the town that we live in. I guess every suburb has a different code. So our code, well, I guess, yeah, we're on the hook for the deductible anyway, so I guess we'll find out. But the adjuster has not been here yet. They're going to be here tomorrow afternoon. But yeah, a lot of running around, calling back and forth, and people changing times that they were going to come, and yeah, so we'll see what happens. Anywho, let's jump on into the news, because I've got quite a bit tonight. Arriving in April is the Paranoia 5 Clones from Alpha Complex Miniatures game. And I've got the latest from Modiphius Entertainment. Welcome to the miniatures version of the iconic dark humor Paranoia role-playing game, adapted by the same team as 5 Parsecs from Home and 5 Leagues from the Borderlands. Want a game where teammates have each other's backs and work together to accomplish a noble goal? Well, this ain't it. Join a so-called team of troubleshooters, find the trouble, get shot, and complete missions that keep Alpha Complex the safe, efficient utopia its citizens trust. None of them are members of secret societies, and absolutely none of them have mutant powers. They're certainly not going to report each other as traitors or shoot each other in the back with a laser pistol. Hey, get them before they get you. And if you die, don't worry. You have 5 identical clones to take your place and mop up what's left of you. Trust the computer. It never makes mistakes. Procedural, solo, co-op, and group play rules and game mastered options are found throughout. This features a fast-moving system emphasizing fun over complexity. There are 50 mutant powers that you definitely don't have, 20 pieces of starting equipment. You'll find a mission generator, plus 20 scenarios with 7 objective types. You'll even learn about secret societies and security clearance rules. Foes include insect troopers, vulture squadron warriors, bots, mutant creatures, monsters, and aliens. And of course, your fellow clones. There are rules for random hazards, cameras, vending machines, even doors. Optional rules for mandatory bonus duties, service groups, and more. 10 status effects. You too can be confused, stunned, bleeding, stressed, infected, and more. Often at the same time. Embrace the anxiety. Paranoia will keep you safe. Trust no one and keep your laser handy. This hardcover is going to carry an MSRP of $48 when it lands in April. So how about that? I like the minis. The minis look really nice. Although, weirdly enough, and I'm not sharing an image of these miniatures, but the packs of, well, boxes, I should say, of miniatures, they're $40 and change. You know, the Modiphius website always has that weird kind of like exchange rate. They can't just say, hey, it's $39.99 and we'll stick to that. It's always kind of shifting a little bit here and there. So as you can see, most of these sets have 5, 6 miniatures, same price. Then there's one that has 3. And it's not as if they're larger than any of these other minis. And it's got the same price. So it's sort of like, it's a little strange. But still, looks kind of cool. Paranoia, miniatures, what can I tell you? All right, let's see. Boomerman Dan Webb is with us, as is Mark Hawkswell. And I already said, did I say? Yeah, I was going to say, Bard the Bear Wolfson's been here since the beginning. Let's move right along. Currently crowdfunding is a new edition of Tunnels and Trolls from Rebellion Unplugged. And here's the scoop. Rebellion Unplugged is excited to launch Tunnels and Trolls A New Age, their brand new role-playing game and reimagining of Kane. I need a sip here. Can't even get Ken St. Andre's name out. Boy, I tell you. It's a brand new role-playing game and reimagining of Ken St. Andre's classic Tunnels and Trolls from 1975, the world's second ever role-playing game, although I know there's been some argument about that. But as far as I understand, I think it was the second, after Dungeons and Dragons. Your characters are at once ordinary but fated kindred, and adventures take you deep into dark tunnels, dangerous caverns, bustling cities, and face-to-face with ancient... Anybody want to take a guess? The title's the giveaway. Trolls. Tunnels and Trolls, A New Age is lightning quick, immediate, and thrilling, with a fresh, streamlined rule set that's easy to learn for newcomers while evolving the most loved elements of the classic game for veteran fans. Solo adventures were a huge part of the original game and are not forgotten. Rebellion Unplugged is proud to launch their solo side quests, starting with the Wailing City and another which could be unlocked during the campaign. This full-color hardback includes a wealth of GM support to help first-timers run a smooth and flavorful session with systems and tables for a quick generation of monsters, encounters, and locations, and guidance aplenty for when players inevitably go off book. I would have shared the video, but it would have flagged me for copyright. Womp womp. So, sorry, no 2-minute, 12-second video. And the funny thing is, I uploaded that video this morning. I didn't get a notification that it was flagged until about 10 minutes before the stream started. Glad I caught that. Anywho, this Kickstarter project is past the 300% funding mark. You can reserve a copy of the hardcover core book with PDF for a pledge of approximately $67. Once again, it's across the pond. So giving you approximations here. Otherwise, it's in euros. If you want to score just the PDF, you could do that for a pledge of approximately $41. So, I understand there are some people very upset about Tunnels and Trolls, A New Age. Yep, because now there is a quick start. It's about, if I remember right, I think it's 60 pages. You're seeing some pages from that quick start right now. So if you want to check it out ahead of time, by all means, you certainly can. I got to be honest, this is Tunnels and Trolls kind of in name only. from what I have seen. I'll be the first to point out, I've not taken a hugely deep dive. I did read through the quick start, and I can see where people are sort of, but you also have to realize that Rebellion Unplugged has to look at the future of Tunnels and Trolls as opposed to the past. Because let's be very honest, and I like Tunnels and Trolls. I reviewed the last deluxe edition that came out. I thought it was great. High-level adventuring, I think, would have gotten really tricky when you're sitting there trying to roll like 60 dice. And I didn't necessarily care for the rules on how to like trim that down, because it kind of defeats the purpose of all those dice. But still, I liked it a ton. I thought it was very, very cool. But the thing is, it's not as if it was selling like gangbusters either. I do understand that Tunnels and Trolls had been very popular in Japan because it just uses 6-sided dice. So that was one of the big deals with Tunnels and Trolls early on, is that it used 6-sided dice, and in Japan it was a bit difficult to get polyhedral dice. So people ran with that rather than Dungeons and Dragons. Kind of wild. 245 Trioxin is with us tonight. Welcome back. Good to see you. Asking, does the original Tunnels and Trolls have the same lore about the trolls as the new edition? Because I was going to say, the trolls have kind of stayed, at least to my knowledge, they had stayed pretty much the same lore-wise throughout all the editions of Tunnels and Trolls, because trolls are not evil monsters in Tunnels and Trolls. How about that? Yes. So some discussion of the kinks and the clash. I got to say, I think this is the first time we've seen music discussion going on in chat. Sometimes we'll see movies, TV shows, but I think this is the first time we've had some musical discussion going on. Moving right along, Pelgrane Press has teamed with Bundle of Holding for a new Trail of Cthulhu offer, and I've got the deets on the deal. Investigator. This new Trail of Cthulhu mega bundle presents a monstrously large hoard of rulebooks, supplements, and source books for Trail of Cthulhu, the tabletop role-playing game of Eldritch Cthulhu Mythos Investigations using the Gumshoe system from Pelgrane Press. Adventures using the investigative Gumshoe system, also seen in the Yellow King RPG, Swords of the Serpentine, Night's Black Agents, the Esoterrorists, and others. What about Bubblegum Shoe, man? Although it's not from Pelgrane Press. Aren't about hunting for clues, but interpreting them, figuring out how they solve the mystery. Star designer, getting fancy there, Kenneth Haidt uses his encyclopedic knowledge of history and Lovecraftian horror to capture the creeping madness of the 1930s, a time of sweeping cruelty by authoritarian rulers and the great old ones alike. Should point out, in October of 2024, Pelgrane Press crowdfunded the second edition of Trail of Cthulhu, which will rise later this year. I think we're actually going to have an opportunity to check this out. I shouldn't say this, but the second edition of Trail of Cthulhu. I do believe. But back to the mega bundle, because it features the 2008 first edition rulebook and support line. All first edition supplements and scenarios are wholly compatible with the forthcoming second edition rulebook. The new edition adds character creation templates, new ability spends, new campaign frames, and introductory adventures, as well as an expanded guide to the mythos. This new mega bundle gathers a dozen titles from 6 previous bundles, along with 3 major additions new to this bundle of holding. Fearful Symmetries, the Book of the New Jerusalem, and Cthulhu Apocalypse. Together, they give you a caseload of Trail of Cthulhu investigations worthy of the great library of Solano. Everything you need to uncover dark Lovecraftian plots by demented cultists. For just $17.95, you'll get all 8 titles in the starter collection, which has a retail value of $128 as DRM-free PDFs, including the complete Trail of Cthulhu First Edition rulebook, along with the free 2024 Second Edition Quick Start, Kenneth Height's Mythos Bestiary Hideous Creatures, the scenario anthologies Out of Time, Out of Space, and Out of the Woods. What, no Out of Luck? Shadows over Filmland, as well as Ken Height's Treatise on Mythos Magic, Rough Magics, and the Keeper's Resource Book and Screen. That's all at the first tier. If you pay more than the current threshold price of $36.37, may have changed by a couple of pennies since I wrote this, or since I pasted this, because this is directly from Bundle of Holding. You'll level up and also get the entire bonus collection with 7 more titles worth an additional $141, including Fearful Symmetries and its companion occult guide, The Book of the New Jerusalem, Cthulhu Apocalypse, Eternal Lies, Cthulhu City, Mythos Expeditions, and The Final Revelation. These savings will run through March 31st. It's my understanding, and I will be the first to point out, I don't have a ton of experience with Trail of Cthulhu. Isn't Eternal Lies supposed to be kind of the masterpiece campaign for Trail of Cthulhu? It's sort of the Masks of Nyarlathotep for Trail of Cthulhu. At least that's what I've heard. That is what I've heard. I would also say it's probably not terribly difficult to port Trail of Cthulhu Adventures over to Call of Cthulhu. Might be a little easier the other way around, in the reverse, you know. But still, I have heard some good things about Eternal Lies, Shadows over Filmland. In fact, we were talking about Call of Cthulhu last week, and I was like, yeah, Shadows over Filmland, because remember we were talking about Pelgrane Press, and I said, yeah, they did this really excellent campaign that was set in LA, in Hollywood, and I was like, was that the name of it? Obviously enough, it's not. It is not Shadows over Filmland. That is for Trail of Cthulhu. So there you go. All right. Let's see. I think we've had somebody pop in. Oh, there we go. A couple of people. We've got W. Forge and Harvey Chuckles. Welcome back to you both. Pete Rackledge said, great covers. DB said they ran Shadows over Filmland a few years ago. It was pretty good. Nice. Very, very nice. J-Man says, love Trail of Cthulhu, especially Fall of Delta Green. Yeah, you know, funny enough, I kind of like Fall of Delta Green more than I do Delta Green. I know it doesn't have tons of support for it. In fact, I think Fall of Delta Green has had all of like one adventure published for it. I dig Delta Green. I have reviewed a good amount of Delta Green. Some of the stuff is just a little too twisted for my personal taste. It's the kind of stuff that's like, you know, we get together at the game table to escape from the insanities of this world. It's like, I don't necessarily want to bring them to the table. And again, that's just me. Like I said, I like Delta Green a ton. I have reviewed it. I have done a why you should play video about Delta Green that still pulls in quite a few views. It's like, I think 4 years old. Anyway, this is a pretty damn good bundle. I want to take a peek, especially if you're curious about Trail of Cthulhu, or if you run Call of Cthulhu. That's why I'm sitting there going, bouncing this around. Maybe, could be. All right, moving right along. Now available in print from Heltung Storytelling is Whispers of the Woods. And here's the skinny. This is Whispers of the Woods, a minimalistic role-playing game in which players will fill the shoes of 18th century villagers on a journey into mysterious dark woods. The game is focused on storytelling, making difficult decisions, and weaving a collaborative, intertwined narrative. Beautifully illustrated with art based on old linocuts and filled with tones of story. Tones? I guess it's supposed to be tons. But it's not like the old way of spelling tons. Strange. Anyway, tons of story hooks, tables, and plot points. It's a unique tool for creating memorable, atmospheric stories. On 90 pages, you'll find 7+ roles. So wouldn't that make it 8? I'm just telling you, that's what it says. 7+ roles. Like the hunter, artist, crone, or child. Character creation filled with random tables for secrets, sickness, abilities, and more. Collaborative rules for fighting and resolving issues. Solo and GM-less play rules. Tools for the gamekeeper to create intriguing, deep stories based on legends and real natural phenomena. There's a hex map generator with dozens of encounters supported by random tables and plot hooks. This 90-page hardcover carries an MSRP of $33. If you want to grab just the PDF alone, you can do so over at DriveThruRPG for $15. And when this came out in last summer, I think it was like August of last year, it came out in PDF. I shared news about this back then as well, because it strikes me as being pretty interesting. I'm really curious about the 7+ character types. I'm joking. But this does sound kind of cool. Maybe you have to channel your inner M. Night Shyamalan in The Village. Maybe. DB says, so you don't want to play the Desperate Housewives RPG? No, not really. Not really. I mean, although that's not really like real world insanity, it's just, DB says, they aren't the insanities of this world. Some of them are. I'll be very honest. Delta Green started to lose me when they, when they released the adventure that had child abuse in it, and it wasn't like, oh yeah, you were role playing it or anything like that, right? It was done relatively tastefully, but still, it was sort of the way it was presented and the way it was supposed to be kind of played out at the game table. Just no, thank you. All right, moving right along. Let's wrap up with the final news piece, because Okumarts Games has released Pulp Inc. in PDF. Here's what I know. Get ready for adventure. Pulp adventure is a style of storytelling that flourished from the 1920s to the 1940s in the pages of cheap pulp magazines printed on rough wood pulp paper. These stories were fast, colorful, and full of danger, daring explorers, masked heroes, brilliant villains, lost temples, secret cults, and ancient reliefs. No, it is relics. For a second, I thought it was reliefs. Hidden in jungles, deserts, and forgotten cities. The heroes of pulp fiction traveled the globe and sometimes beyond, facing traps, monsters, rival treasure hunters, and sinister organizations. If you think of the globe-trotting adventure of Raiders of the Lost Ark, action of the Rocketeer, or the exotic intrigue of Tales of the Gold Monkey, I can't believe they actually mentioned that. When I saw this earlier, I was like, wow, really? Tales of the Gold Monkey. Talk about blast from the past. Well, if you think of those things, you already grasp pulp's key elements of bold heroes, dangerous mysteries, and the thrill of discovery. Pulp Inc. provides 6 character classes. Adventure Scholar, not always about swinging over chasms, but that's here too. They rely on what they know and what they can do. Maps, books, lore, myth, rumors, that's their currency and what sets them apart from the rest. Masked Hero. There's lots of options here, and some of it isn't just about superheroes. It can be martial artists, that kind of thing. Or could be like the Spirit. If I remember correctly, the Spirit doesn't have any superpowers. He's just someone who the criminals think is dead. At least that's what I seem to recall. You know how long it's been since I read a Spirit story? I should say the Spirit story. Long time. We got the Mercenary, again, covering anyone who's seen some action, whether it was in a military setting or the streets of the Windy City. Ooh, little Chicago mention there, huh? You got the Mystic. It's a kind of magic. It could also be ancient technology, psionic abilities, or good old-fashioned stage magic trickery. We got Weird Science. Inventors and rogue scientists. They could be a danger or a boon to humanity. Who decides? And then the Wild One. No, we're not talking about Marlon Brando. Raised by wolves, brought up in a barn. It's entirely possible in a pulp adventure. This is a standalone game inspired by the Merkborg and Cyborg game systems by Occult Ortmeister. I think it's Ortmeister Games or Stockholm Cartel. While not as dark as the inspirational source material, the system can be unforgiving and reflects the harshness of pulp adventure. The system was mostly chosen for its simplicity and plug-and-play do-it-yourself approach. It's easy to hack and plays quickly. Things don't get bogged down and everyone has something unique to do. If you know how to play D&D, you can pick this up and play right away. Helpful tables help speed up the process of game prep as well, ensuring a fun time for game masters as well as players. These tables also facilitate solo play if desired. The 64-page PDF of Pulp Inc. can be had at Drive-Thru RPG for $8. W4 says, well, at least they didn't mention Bring 'em Back Alive. W4's, wait, DB said, what's wrong with Bring 'em Back Alive? Didn't it get canceled after like 3 episodes? Or because I think didn't Tales of the Gold Monkey last an entire season? Daryl Harrods with us says, yes, correct. The Spirit had no powers. Except he was a smart cop. Oh, Danny. Damn, I can't think of his last name, the character's last name. Daryl also points out that the Phantom did not have any superpowers either. Didn't really follow the Phantom. So DB says, nah, that and Tales of the Gold Monkey made it to the end of their first seasons. Denny Colt, that's it. Thank you, DB. Denny Colt is the spirit. We mentioned, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, just how god awful that movie was, directed by Frank Miller. And hey, I got nothing against Frank Miller, but well, okay, his art is horrible now. It's almost like it's a joke, like he's kind of going the people. Saw some of his they were like variant covers that were it's awful, just awful. One was Wolverine and was like, oh my gosh. But then again, he is the man who brought Daredevil back from pretty much the trash bin and got Dark Knight Returns. So yes. DB says, yeah, that Spirit movie was bad. The Spirit was wearing Reeboks. DB says the Phantom had some crazy slant striped undies. Like I said, I remember seeing it in one of the newspapers because I would read the comics, but I never read the kind of like ongoing series like the Steve Canyons and things like that. Although I did read Bloom County religiously, Calvin and Hobbes, but yep, pretty cool. Pretty cool. All right, that is it for the news tonight. Of course, I did mention Drive-Thru RPG. Don't forget, the Gaming Gang, thus the Dispatch, is affiliated with the One Bookshelf sites. So if you're going to stop on by Drive-Thru RPG, Dungeon Masters Guild, Storytellers Vault, Wargame Vault, any of the numerous One Bookshelf sites, please stop by thegaminggang.com first. Click on It Is Now a Box ad, still right there on the front page, but our sponsor is occupying the prime real estate up top for the next few weeks. But if you are going to go visit Drive-Thru RPG, do me a favor, stop over by thegaminggang.com first. Click on that ad because if you make a purchase, I get 5% of that sale. And all those commissions really do add up and help keep thegaminggang.com around. It actually really, really does. Of course, if you like this video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. If you like the video, if you dig the channel, if you find the Gaming Gang to be a valuable resource, hell, if you just like what we do, there are actually a couple of other ways that you can support the outlet. One, make a one-time donation by way of PayPal. Hell, you can buy me a 2-liter bottle of soda. Yummy. Or, I guess I could say, and you can become a monthly member of our Patreon. You'll find links down in the show notes for all of that. Also down in those show notes, you'll find an invite link to our Discord server. It's absolutely free to sign up. So be sure to hang with the gang over on Discord. And then, of course, every live show, I like to give a shout out to our Patreon members. So big thank you to Cabal, Kevin R. Smith, Talzek, Sean O'Donnell, Herman Lutman, Gustavo Cavalho, Flint Fireforge, Kevin King, Game Cat, RPG Munch, Tier 2 DM, Pete Stracklich, Dan Webb, Tessie Trekkie, Agile Monk, and the Madman. Thank you kindly. Dan Webb asks, if we have stuff in our drive-thru cart before we click on the Gaming Gang link, will you still get a percentage when those items are purchased? No. No, it will not. I will tell you, though, the way that affiliate links usually will work, not always, but usually, and I do believe this is how the One Bookshelf site affiliate codes work. let's say you click on the ad on thegaminggang.com. That will stay in your system. It'll stay in your computer. It'll be a cookie for a week. Now, if you were to stop by some other outlet or somebody else who's got an affiliate code and you clicked on that, that will replace the affiliate code that's being saved. So it lasts a week. So if you go and you were to click on the ad over at thegaminggang.com, you made a purchase, then yes, I would have a commission on that. I think there's a few items that don't get a commission, but they're few and far between. And then let's say 3 days later, you're like, hey, yeah, you know what? I forgot to pick up this adventure for the game I just got. And you're like, I'm going to go back over to Drive-Thru RPG. That affiliate code will still be in your system. So it should still work, and I get a commission of that. But you never know. But yeah, it's after 7 days, it's the cookie's supposed to drop off. So, I mean, those of you out there know computers and things like that, you've got cookies galore on your computers. So anyway, so it's actually, those are one of the things that make a cache work for your browser. So you don't have to sit there and have every website you've visited a million times have to go through the process of downloading every single image you get. So Dan Webb says, got it. Making a shopping list first. Very nice. Much appreciated. Danny Gable's with us again tonight. Welcome aboard. So, want to point out a couple of things real quick. Number one, if you were watching last night, thank you. It was the 1300th live stream. And I did some giveaways. And I saw some comments about how some people out there would have been able to get the answer in to the question I had asked, but they got stuck with an ad on YouTube. I have nothing to do with that. So I do want to point out, those of you out there who did not win one of the 6 giveaways from last night, you can still get into the running. You won't win the bundles. But as I pointed out last night, I will give out basically a choice. I already shared it last night, of core books that if you win, you get your choice. And it's not like, well, I've got one of each. No, you'll get your choice. So it's like Call of Cthulhu, Traveler. I don't have the listing right in front of me at the moment. Old School Essentials, Classic Rules. That was another one. So 2 ways for you to get into the running to win with those giveaways. First is be a subscriber to the channel. Comment on last night's show, not tonight's show, last night's show. And it's got to be, the comment has to be something. Can be like, comment. And you can also go to thegaminggang.com and comment on any item on there, any news piece, any video on there, whatever. So I am going to select 5 random commenters on the video. I'm going to choose 5 random commenters from the website. And I'll tell you right now, going over to the website and putting a comment in is practically a guarantee at the moment of winning, because the contest's only running through tomorrow at the start of the live stream. So there you go. So Kevin R. Smith popping on in. he was one of the people who probably would have been able to win one of those bundles last night, but got stuck behind a YouTube ad. Go after the 2 other giveaways. So even if, people were watching like, I don't know. So it says, so does my comment complaining about how the YouTube ads kept me from winning count? It's a substantive, that's a comment. But I also just mentioned, might not have caught this as you're popping on in. You can also still be in the running by going over to thegaminggang.com and commenting on a post over there. And as I just pointed out, at this moment, that is practically a guarantee of winning. If you know what I mean, jelly beans. There you go. So that is what I wanted to let you know. All right. So tonight, we're going to talk about the new Winter Dungeons and Dragons survey from Wizards of the Coast. And by way of that, we're going to talk about what you want Wizards of the Coast to know about how you feel about your Dungeons and Dragons. Or maybe it's not your Dungeons and Dragons anymore. We're going to discuss that this evening. But first, I think, well, is it time? Is it time for a brief intermission? Should I draw this out a little longer? Nah. We'll get down to brass tacks right after this brief intermission.
Yikes, spikes, beech nuts, gum.
By beech nuts, by gum.
Yikes, spikes, improved like gum.
By beech nuts, by gum.
By gosh.
No, by gum. By beech
By beech
by
nuts,
gum.
by gum.
By fruit
By fruit
by
spikes,
gum.
by gum. Yikes, spikes,
By beech
by beech
by
nuts,
gum.
by golly.
By gum.
With 5 different flavors, with extra flavor for the whole family in every stripe.
Luscious lime stripe. Lip smack and lemon stripe.
Delicious orange stripe.
Mixed fruit and cherry stripe. All for you in every pack of beech nut fruit stripe gum. By beech nut,
By gum.
by tea,
By gum.
by king,
By gum.
by gush.
By gum.
And there's extra flavor for the whole family in every scrumptious stripe.
More flavors to choose. More flavors to choose.
The flavor starts lively.
The flavor stays lively. By beech nut.
By beech nut, by gum.
By gum.
By gum.
Beech nut fruit stripe for the whole family. By gum.
Hello, grocery store? Send me some Wilkins instant coffee. How instant can you get?
Hi, gang. It's your old buddy Sugar Bear. I can't get enough Super Sugar Crisp. And that's the twin-hulled airboat. It comes in Super Sugar Crisp. Line the propeller and let her rip. Look at him cut across the water. Got rubber band power. Airboats are born racing. Uh-oh, splasharoo. Come in 3 groovy colors. Get racing. 1 twin-hull airboat in each specially marked box of post Super Sugar Crisp and frosted rice crinkles.
It's the exciting new Daredevil Trick Track with the incredible Dolphin Racer, gear-driven for longer battery life. Daredevil Trick Track, full of fantastic tricks. A sensational new steering track. A wall of logs. A teeter-totter. And it's up, 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 and over we go. A somersault flip. And now, straight through a fly-apart house. Get Daredevil Trick Track, action-packed with tricks and tracks. It's thrilling, spilling, crashing, smashing. Daredevil Trick Track from Transogram, where the fun comes from. Wow!
Somewhere in the future, a man from the past.
Find McCloud and kill him.
is all that stands between life and death.
There simply isn't enough energy on the planet to take down the shield without killing us all.
The world is dying, McCloud. The shield has to come down.
Greetings, Highlander. You cold? Rather glad the magic works.
You got a light?
Let's have some fun. Remember, you called me. Just remember, the quickening.
It sounds like magic.
Well, it is, kind of.
Christopher Lambert, Sean Connery. Highlander 2, The Quickening.
Highlander 2, The Confusioning. Yeah, I like DB said, oh, Highlander 2, that's a choice. Yeah. Peace Rackwitz says it's about to get spicy. So, a couple of things to point out. Number one, hopefully by now you realize, excuse me. Hopefully by now you realize I spent half the show belching. Hopefully by now you realize I'm not here to bullshit anybody, but I'm also not here to soft soap anyone either. So tonight we're going to discuss the survey that Wizards of the Coast has rolled out. It is their Winter Dungeons and Dragons survey. I have taken the survey. We'll talk a little bit about that. But our main focus tonight is, what do you want Wizards of the Coast to know about how you feel about Dungeons and Dragons? And there's a few things I am going to mention here. I'm looking for legitimate critique. Okay. So as I mentioned last night, the sooner the grown-yards out there, not all of them, but many of them, get it through their skulls that, guess what? Dungeons and Dragons is not going back to 2nd edition AD&D. That's a dinosaur that's not going to be revived. The happier they'll be. And it's sort of funny. I was talking to somebody who had, we were DMing. And I said, this is how I look at it. It's the same thing. And yes, I get it. You know, I'm older. This world is not aimed at me. You know, there's a lot. I just watched a documentary on Netflix about the manosphere. And I thought to myself, man, I just don't understand society any longer. Anyway, but it's sort of along the lines of, good luck calling your local radio station that plays the hot hits. Probably don't even have an actual live DJ anyway. It's all programmed. But still, good luck calling them up and saying, hey, you know what? I want to hear more Bob Seger, Tom Petty and Fleetwood Mac. It ain't happening, Dooley. No. So the people out there are like, oh, I want Dungeons and Dragons to be like 3rd edition D&D. It's not going to happen because Dungeons and Dragons is not designed for me anymore. I'm not their target market. Many of you watching right now or about to watch on Memorex, you're not their market either. And that's okay. So, anyway, so let's talk a little bit about the survey. I think we've got a couple of new folks who popped in. Tesco Love is one. Hello again. I think someone else had popped in. Maybe not. Maybe not. Nope. Okay. So Tesco Love asks, what's the 2nd edition retro clone? Golden Glory. Yeah, I think it's 4. Oh, there you go. Kevin R. Smith pointed out, yes, it's 4 Golden Glory, but you are on the right track. So that was certainly right there. Tesco Love says, bring back Thaco. Thaco the clown. They did. They brought back Thaco. Thaco the clown. Tesco Love also pointed out of all the movies, Highlander 2 is certainly one of them. All right. So I took the survey, and it's super fast. And I thought it was kind of funny because there is a section there for you to share your thoughts. And if I remember right, I think it gave you all of like 200 characters. Maybe it was 500. But still, that wasn't a lot. But for the most part, it was just like I thought it was. It was one of these things where it's like strongly disagree, strongly agree. I was like, I would recommend Dungeons and Dragons to a friend. And it just had different levels. That was pretty much the whole majority of it. I was really surprised because I thought, well, yeah, it's like 4 pages. I'm like, okay. And then like one page was like, what is your age? That was it. It was like, okay. So the realization that it's not much of a survey, but the madman says, what I want is to see consistent quality. With quality, profit should follow. But as mentioned numerous times, I've moved on to other systems. My comment I left was that they should stop pulling in 50 or more freelancers on every release because it just makes everything feel very disconnected and soulless. So that's the comment I had left. So Harvey Chuckle says, no matter what, I'm the DM. Danny Gable says, love old school essentials and their AD&D still. Kevin R. Smith, I'd like to see them stick to a more traditional fantasy look in their art. My problem with the Mexican orcs was anachronism, not a political thing. Yeah. Everybody knows Kevin R. Smith's racist. Come on. You'd see some of the comments that we have to delete afterwards. Same with the glam rock bard. Would you consider that glam art? I just was like, I thought it was just what the fuck art. I was like, what the? Okay. DB says, I'd like to see them develop a second stream of D&D, a little less cartoony, more mature for different kinds of gamers. Oh, another of the pages was what live actual play, or not live, but what actual plays do you watch? And it like listed all these different actual plays. And then at the bottom it said, I don't watch those sorts of streams. And that's what I selected. I was like, I did take a look at some of the comments that were floating on the front of the page. It's like, so you got a lot of people out there, they're just haters. It doesn't matter. They're just looking for something to vent about. We see it with content creators all the time. Don't get me started. There's a content creator. I know things about this person that they don't realize I know about. And they're not a very nice person. And I've seen it firsthand. But they were, once again, it was something like Dungeons and Dragons as we know it is over. It's like, God damn it. Come on, man. Didn't you just do this same fucking video like a month ago? Man, your cycle's getting shorter and shorter and shorter. So yes, Coco B is with us. They said, my thoughts on D&D, sell it. That was, a few people were saying that. It's not going to happen. Who is going to be able to squeeze as much profit out of Dungeons and Dragons than Hasbro? That's a serious question I have. Who is going to be able to do that? Can't be like, oh, well, if Paizo, no game company is going to be able to come along and, just be like, oh yeah, we're going to step right on in here. Pete's Right says, the corporation doesn't get it, but the community does. Check out Dolmanwood back there. Who? Behind me? Oh, by the way, anybody curious about Tunnels and Trolls? I'll get out of the way. That is as far as I know, the last hardcover edition. I think they were all hardcovers after a certain point of Tunnels and Trolls. It's a prized possession, really. But there were a lot of people who were talking about, well, you guys need to sell it. A lot of comments were, you need to listen to the community. I understand that. You're never going to make everybody happy, because the days of being able to please the majority of fans out there, it's over. I mean, those days are gone. I think most people realize that. One of the reasons why I think I mentioned this last night. One of the reasons I think Wizards of the Coast has this survey is, because some people are like, well, and I pointed this out too. I mean, with a lot of people, they burn bridges. And there are a lot of people who, up to a certain point, they were kind of rolling with it with Wizards of the Coast until they got into that open game license fiasco. And then that was like, yeah, a lot of people were like, or that's what started to sour people on Wizards of the Coast. But as far as selling it, I know there was, somebody posted our content creator did a video talking about Elon Musk buying it. Cause I think Elon Musk tweeted about buying D&D one. Come on. There you go. Oh, hey, look, see, I'm trying to catch up on the comments here. And I just saw somebody say Elon Musk. Elon Musk is destroying his own companies right now. He's not looking to do anything else. Okay, so let's see. Let's pick back up. Tesco Love, more creative lead, cohesive work, and also hiring on artists full-time so we can avoid the AI slop. Oh, but they want to do that AI. Oh, Hasbro wants that AI. Although I know I think it was a CEO, not of Hasbro, somebody affiliated with Wizards or D&D, whatever, said, well, we're not gonna use AI because the fans don't want it. So it was kind of like, huh? Sort of like the McDonald's CEO, right? Ah, yeah, hey, the big arch or whatever the hell it's called. It's like I've seen birds take bigger bites. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's real sincere. That's about what I got out of the, well, we're not going to do any AI because, our fans don't want it. So there is some guessing of who I was talking about as far as content creator. I'm not going to say who it was. Because you got to realize there are a lot of people who make those same damn videos over and over and over. Dan Webb says maybe Elon will save D&D. No. Don't see that at all. Okay, so let's also remember that Elon Musk talked about playing some video game. I forget what it was. And then it turned out that he wasn't very good at the video game and that he actually would hire people to like farm in the game for him. I was like, okay. Ravenclaw 74 is with us. To be honest, there's so much old school and third-party material out there. I can play well into my retirement without buying anything new. Which is getting us to the point I really want to make. Bring back the pig-headed or pig-snouted orcs. Yes. Kevin R. Smith said, yeah, I was about to say Elon Musk needs to save Tesla before he can save anything else. That's what I mean. Elon's doing some things that are not good for Elon. And I got to be honest, I don't give a shit about the guy. Guy doesn't give a shit about us either. So, but still, I don't want to see this guy's health just, disappear or just, evaporate. Let's see. Bard the Bear Wolfson says the AI will be cheaper, but they will sell the books to us cheaper. Yeah, I'm sure that's going to be the case. Well, we already know that Hasbro hates the fact that people like books because they have tried to float out that they were getting rid of books. It was all going to be digital, and they have gotten tons of pushback on that. I wonder if they stuck to their guns about not selling to Australia. Remember, wasn't it about a year ago or so? Maybe it was a little more than that. That Wizards of the Coast was talking about that they weren't going to sell physical books in Australia anymore. So. Pete Strikewich says Joey Royale rocks. Oh, yeah. Kevin R. Smith says, talking about Elon, he was stupid enough to stream himself playing so people could figure out he wasn't good at it. Danny Gable says, billionaires are not your friends. Most millionaires aren't either. Pete Strikewich says they've stuck to their guns since the open game license. Ravenclaw 74 says RPGers are still a very literate people, I think. I'm going to put this diplomatically. Well, I guess. If you're a game master, yes. If you're a dungeon master, if you're a game master, yes, you have to be. But you notice more and more players out there, we've talked about this as well. More and more players out there don't feel it's their responsibility to have to know the rules. More and more players out there are like, it's not even their responsibility to understand what the hell's on the character sheets. It's So I've said before, oh, well, if you can't be bothered, if I'm going to have to control your characters, then I might as well just go play Baldur's Gate 3. So, so Kevin R. Smith's talking a bit about Doge. I want to keep this more on topic here. But yes, DB's asking if anyone's seen any of those depositions. Yeah, sadly. Sadly. Danny Gable says true of most of their players. So we've kind of talked about this before in the past, that I don't understand why so many people out there just still get just triggered by what Wizards of the Coast is doing with Dungeons and Dragons. Now, as far as this survey goes, honestly, I don't see what information Wizards of the Coast is going to end up getting from it, because the reality is it's a pretty half-assed survey. And it's like, yeah, okay, here's a few characters. Tell us what you think. So you're never, going to be able to put everything in there that, you're thinking about. So I think a little bit of this survey is just to kind of stroke people off. I'm just being honest. Because the reality is Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro already know the direction that they want to go with Dungeons and Dragons. What they're finding is that they're hitting bumps in the road, right? It's not as smooth sailing as they were hoping it was going to be. But the thing is, they're still going to get to the destination they want to get to. And I think the sooner because I know there are people out there who are like, oh yeah, they could turn it around. They could change things up. They could go back to the way it was. They're not going to, because they don't need to cater to gamers like us anymore. And I understand that. Like, I threw out the whole, call up the radio station and tell them, hey man, why don't you guys play any Elton John? Yeah, where's the John Cougar Mellencamp? Or hey, better yet, where's the John Cougar? You'll get a look like, what the, huh? Because these companies look at gamers like myself and many of you, and they figured, okay, so we bring them back on board. We turn things around. We go back to a lot of the old ways of doing things. What are they going to be playing for maybe another 10 years? We don't need to appeal to that. We need to appeal to the kids that we're going to have for 30 years, 40 years of buying our products. So, as I pointed out, I don't understand why so many people who really aren't that heavily invested into Dungeons and Dragons anymore even give a shit about what Wizards of the Coast does or doesn't do. I mean, the reality, and I have nothing, I don't have a beef with Wizards of the Coast. I don't have a beef with anybody who works on Dungeons and Dragons or anything like that. Never have, because the reality is it just really doesn't matter that much to me. When I review something from D&D, if and when they decide to send a review copy, I do a review and it's like, okay, well, yeah, I brought some views in. Okay, great. I don't sit there going, oh man, can't wait. Although myself personally, I think my only beef really with Wizards of the Coast has been, all reviewers should be treated equally. It shouldn't be like, oh, well, the kiss asses, they get the stuff early so they can, suck in all the views. And then the people who try to give even honest reviews, it's like, well, we'll get that out to you when we can. Kevin R. Smith says some of the problems have been self-inflicted. Yeah, a lot of them. a lot of their issues have been self-inflicted. Ravenclaw says a few years ago they ran old school BECMI and AD&D modules using 5th edition. Now I'm going to run many of the same old school modules using Shadow Dark. Yeah. Kevin R. Smith says, funny thing was, I remember hearing that there was a movement in the early days of D&D to keep players from reading the rules because knowing the rules took the mystery and wonder out of the game. That'd be weird. I mean, I'm not saying that, the players need to see the bestiary and stuff like that. No, I wouldn't want my players having copies of the monster manual and stuff. But I would like them to understand like the core mechanics and how they work. What die do I roll? The 20-sided die. This one? No, that's a 6-sided die. You need to roll the 20-sided one. This one? Pete Reichert says they are definitely going all in with AI. Somebody at Wizards of the Coast talked about how their game that they DM, they use AI assistance, and it's fabulous. Peter Reichlich also points out those have been along for the long ride will go on without them, and giving D&D the respect it deserves with human artists and human writers. Kevin R. Smith said one of their self-inflicted wounds was writing their virtual tabletop on a game engine that's hard to scale down to low-budget laptops, much less tablets and phones. Yeah, that was a disaster. I remember Elliot and I were at the press party or whatever they want to consider it. And man, they were just crowing. They were just going on and on about, I don't even remember the name of the damn thing. And they were like, well, they were telling us, well, please don't take video of any of the images we're showing you or the virtual tabletop. And we'll provide you with images you can use. I remember I tell Elliot straight out, I'm like, yeah, that's not going to go. It's not going to fly. Danny Gable says, too many players want a video game experience in D&D. Theater of the mind is not what sells now. Ravenclaw 74. Yeah, I think 5th edition is going to be my last edition of D&D I will ever get. Now moving towards Shadow Dark, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, Mech Warrior, and Savage Worlds. You got plenty there. That's a good selection. Bard the Bear Wolfson, I'm still buying, but not like I did. I buy other stuff now more often. Keith Ulu points out Shadow Dark would be a better fit if you're doing like BE, CMI, and AD&D. Will GM for Food is with us again. Welcome aboard. In case their wife is listening, I won't say what they said in chat. Dan Webb says D&D has evolved into many things other than D&D. Well, but that's the thing now, right? It's like it can't just be a thing now. It's got to be like a way of life. It's got to be a lifestyle product. Everything's like this now. It's ridiculous. There you go. Kevin R. Smith. It was Sigil. Yeah. Like I said, no joke. I sat there watching it, and I just was kind of out of the corner of my mouth saying stuff to Elliot. And I was like, nah, I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing that. J-Man asked if I've checked out Barrows and Borderlands. I think I did a news piece on them. On that, I should say. Will GM for Food says, I'm planning to keep on the Borderlands Brunstein using Castles and Crusades or old school essentials. Nice. So the real point I want to make, I still got a few moments here, is I believe as a gamer, you will be far, far happier if you focus on the games that you enjoy, the games that you're playing now, the new experiences you're having with new game systems that 5 years ago, maybe you'd been like, ugh, I'm not going to pick up Cyberpunk Red. Well, it hasn't been out 5 years, I don't think, but still, you know what I mean, right? Castles and Crusades. Why would I get Castles and Crusades? We play 5e. That'd be silly. But because of the missteps that Wizards of the Coast has made, and they continue to make, let's not let them off the hook. They're still screwing up. They leak shit all the time, and people are like, damn, we don't want that. It's like, oh, crap. Sorry, everybody. But as gamers, you'll be far, far happier with the hobby if you just ignore Dungeons and Dragons. And I get it. A lot of folks out there, it's probably easy for me to say because I walked away from D&D when I was 15. I've talked about it before. Picked up Call of Cthulhu, 1981. That was pretty much it. That was pretty much it. And then no one else that I gamed with ran any D&D. Now, there were some TSR products that were still in the mix, but Dungeons and Dragons didn't do it for us anymore. It was Call of Cthulhu and Stormbringer and still some Top Secret and Behind Enemy Lines. And man, the list just goes on and on. But we just were like, yeah. It's like, yeah, it's D&D, whatever. And, it'd be like when, about third edition came out, I really wasn't following tabletop games anymore anyway. It was all computer games. So I don't have the feeling like, and I understand this. I understand some folks out here, maybe not necessarily in chat, but some gamers out there feel like they've been betrayed by Wizards of the Coast. But they were on board with Dungeons and Dragons back when it was TSR. And they were happy with Dungeons and Dragons. And now they feel, well, Wizards of the Coast has abandoned them. And the reality is they have. They have abandoned those gamers. Does it mean that, once again, the self-inflicted wounds where they have ass clowns make it out like, well, we don't want that sort of gamer playing D&D. I know those weren't the words that came out, but that's what people felt. A lot of people felt that way. And it was sort of like, wait a second. You constantly talk about inclusion, and now you're saying, well, we don't want those people. It's kind of like, okay, that was asinine. That was stupid. And it was even stupider when they were like, well, it's the people who actually buy our product. It's like, yeah, that's brilliant, man. Yeah. Okay. DB says D&D is the gateway, gets them in the garden. The challenge is getting them to jump the fence into another garden. Yeah, that is true. Savage Splendor's with us tonight. Welcome back. Good to see you. Daryl here, it says, I divorced D&D in 1992. Savage Splendor said, Troll Lords just semi-officially announced they're going to be releasing new printings of the Gourd books, hopefully starting this year. I mean, I'm just like, I was never big on Gygax's fiction, so not that he wrote a lot of it, but still. I gave his first book a shot a couple of times, and I just couldn't get into it. Ravenclaw asks, was D&D too kiddie or derivative for you and your group? I think part of it, not a big part, but I think a part of it was because the Gamers Guild, that was the answer to one of the trivia questions last night, the high school game club that my friends and I were part of, we tackled everything. So we played Fletcher Pratt's naval war game in a classroom. We pushed all the desks out of the way. And we played that. And if you're not familiar with that, it's a miniatures game where, granted, we had smaller scale, but you had guns that would fire, like 10 feet, stuff like that. We would play that kind of stuff. We would play Morrow Project. I don't think a week would go by without us picking something up and being like, wow, man, this looks really cool. Now we might only get through the character creation and never actually play it, but we were always kind of expanding our horizons. And I think a little bit of us walking, and it was all of us. It wasn't just, oh, well, I stopped and everybody. No, we all were kind of like, I don't want to play D&D. Why don't we play this? I think part of it was because we wanted to be different. That might have been part of it. We're sort of like, well, everybody plays D&D. The other club, our arch enemies. I mentioned that Michael Neistel, it's Neistel, I think, was the president of the other game club. So, and all they did was play D&D. So I think that was kind of another reason why we were like, yeah, those guys play Dungeons and Dragons. We play Squad Leader, and we played Top Secret, and we played, just anything. So anyway, but yeah, I'm just saying the real point. Yes, like I said, you got that survey, Wizards of the Coast. I don't think Wizards of the Coast really cares. I think they've floated this survey out like it's like, oh, we're trying to make nice. But regardless of what you say, we already have like the next 2 years kind of sketched out what we're going to do. And whatever you have to say about it, we don't really care. Yeah, I think it's just, just promotional more than anything else. So some talk about Dungeon Crawl classics. Good stuff. Will GM for Food says the Gord Books is he a Canadian barbarian? No, he is a rogue. Wait a second. Did I just see some? Oh, I thought Keith Lewis said something about a Dungeon Crawl Classics kerfluffle. I was like, wait, what? Although there kind of was, the Judges Guild thing. But, that was all right. All right. So let's get ready to wrap up here. Ravenclaw says, I remember the times before internet, Amazon, and eBay. Man, it was tough to even find other games back then. Just whatever popped up in the single hobby shop in town. Remember, they were called that. Funny enough, growing up in Chicago, we had a few places. So we were lucky in that respect. Because, of course, like the D&D, we would always have like Walden Books and stuff. But then Walden Books started carrying other role-playing game stuff. And then there was also, I don't want to say it was Borders. Crocs and Brentano. Wow, that's a name of a store I haven't said in probably 30 years. But then we had a few game stores, and then we had the Emperor's headquarters that opened up right down the street from me in Chicago. And that was more historical miniature stuff. But they did also stock role-playing games and board games and stuff like that. But it was heavily into like historical miniatures and war games. But that was, luckily we had that. But yeah, I can see, like Ravenclaw says, they were in rural Mississippi. Yeah, that would be a serious challenge. I would take a guess you probably did some mail order in your day and got whatever it was, and you were kind of like, yeah, great. Because I know I did. There were things that I saw in magazines. I was like, oh, hey, I'll send away for that. And it was like, okay. Although I will say, my first Steve Jackson game I ordered by mail, and it was, I'm trying to remember the title of it. It's a kind of war game where you were rescuing the hostages in Iran. Savage Splendor says Walden's books and a few comic shops were their only options for role-playing games as a kid. Tell you what, the comic book stores in the Chicago area did not do games. It was comics. Good luck finding anything else other than comics. Madman says they were surprised they found their first D&D books in 1982 at a souvenir shop at the top of one of the Renaissance Center towers in Detroit. That's wild. Dan Webb says Flying Buffalo Games was their first mail game stop. Yes. Just mentioned Flying Buffalo Games earlier when we were doing the news. Car Wars and Ogre got them into war games, says Will GM for food. I'm trying to remember. What was the first war game I played? I don't think it was Tactics 2. That's kind of an interesting question. I had Ogre, I had Car Wars. It's funny too, because I have had so many people argue with me that Car Wars, when it came out, was in a plastic clamshell. And I was like, no. It was in a Ziploc bag. Oh, no, it was a clamshell. When Car Wars first came out, they didn't have games in the clamshell. There was a place called the Squadron Shop that was out in the suburbs that I was at once. And they were mainly a model shop. But, I had a hobby shop. I've talked about it before. It was called Devon Hobbies in Chicago. It was on the corner of Devon and Western Avenue. And it was mainly models. But then in the back, they had slot car racing. And then they had a display of D&D stuff. And then they actually had a couple of glass cases where they had individual miniatures, like fantasy miniatures you could buy. And that's where I got my first minis. I remember, I think I bought some separate. And then when I had saved up a little more money, I went and picked up some Grenadier boxes. Some discussion of Starfleet battles. I like Starfleet battles. And if you don't want the insane, rules bloat of Starfleet battles, check out Starfire 1, 2, and 3. Because that is the DNA that Starfleet battles is built off of. So kind of cool. Kind of cool. All right. So discussion about the various different places people picked up their games. And Zarquan is with us once again, just as we're wrapping up. So welcome back. So tomorrow's topic, I think, might change. You got to realize, because we have topics here and it's sort of like, well, it's just to get us started just to get a discussion started. We don't necessarily always stay on topic, right? Tonight, a prime example. But I was thinking of talking about railroading in role-playing games because Matt Mercer made a comment that has kind of divided role players. And it wasn't even, Matt Mercer wasn't talking about like railroading, but he was talking about, having things prepared, shiny objects, piece of candy for your players to move them in the right direction and things like that. And some people have pushed back on that, saying, well, that's railroading. It should be just, the natural extension of what the players and their characters do that drive the story. You shouldn't already have everything plotted out, because then they're just on a railroad, right? Yeah. Jeff's going to talk about the Dragonlance Chronicles. I got to be honest, I know very little Dragonlance. Remember, that came out. I was nowhere near D&D. I didn't read any of the novels. There was way, way better fiction out there that I invested my time into. Not that I have any problem with people digging the Dragonlance Chronicles. That's fine. I mean, that was the introduction of some people to fantasy literature, so that's cool. That's no problem. But anyway, so I think we'll talk a little bit about that. So Will GM for Food says, am I wrong wanting to run a Rifts game based on Thundar the Barbarian? Only if it's Rifts for Savage Worlds, then you're okay. I'm not going to get into the Palladium discussion again. All right. Keith Lewis says, I've been working on the railroad all the live long day. The title of the episode I was thinking of making it was, I'm working on a railroad. I thought there's a role-playing game that's out there that's kind of Thundar the Barbarian with the serial numbers kind of scratched off. Could have swore there was one. I might be wrong. All right, everybody. So that is it for this time out. If you were watching live, thank you very much. If you watched live and took part in chat, tip of the cap to you. Because not only are you keeping me company, also keeping each other company while I share the news or go off on a bender on a topic or something like that. But of course, I know a lot of folks out there, you don't have an opportunity to watch live. Doesn't matter if you're watching live or on Memorex. Thank you for taking time out to watch any of the videos here on the Gaming Gang channel. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you will not find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. If you like the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Be sure to get into the running for the contests. Still got stuff to give away. So be sure to get into the giveaways before tomorrow's live stream. Do not forget. Anyway, if you haven't subscribed, why not? And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell. And if you ring the bell, make sure you mark all notifications, because that way it will not only let you know when the Dispatch streams live Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings at 7 p.m. Central. It'll also let you know when I share other videos, such as my upcoming review of The Adventures Dark and Deep Core Rulebook from author Joseph Block. And yes, this is a hefty puppy. So stay tuned for that. Enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time of day it is in your neck of the woods. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thank you very much for watching. And as always, I certainly hope each and every one of you gets to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.